Today I'm with the first pick. It's Young Fella Wednesday. And like we always do, we're talking NFL draft. Should Ty Simpson be QB1 after a relatively rocky outing against South Carolina? Can anyone challenge Jeremiah Love for running back ran? We'll talk about that, including some NFL rookie standouts as well. And also the news that Tyler Shough has been named the starter in New Orleans. Not really a shock now that we're 9 weeks into the season. But what has to happen over the final 2 months for the Saints to keep from drafting the quarterback, which with what will likely be top 5 pick? I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Ran Carthon. This is episode 311 and Ran. Clock's ticking, my man. 176 days to the 2026 NFL Draft. Pittsburgh, PA, how are you doing? Good, sir.
Man, I'm great. That 176, I felt like, I don't know. It just felt like last week it was said like 190 something. You know what I mean? So it's getting here. I was just on the phone with a current executive in the league, and we were talking about the draft and kind of just going through the numbers and just like the approach to hitting these draft guys. And it's like, man, like how much work are you doing early versus how much work are you doing late? And because we both have been in it for a very, very, very long time, it was like, hey, man, you only need the final answer in April. But he was like, hey, man, like that's true. He was like, but you also got to lead a group who are expecting you to have answers prior to, you know what I mean? So, hey, man, time waits for no man.
You know, it's crazy because we were doing the post-draft wrap-up from the 2024 class, or 2025 class, excuse me, and that was double 176 ago. That was in the 330s days until. Now we're at 176, so we are more than halfway through the college football season. We're about to be halfway through the NFL season. Let me ask you this, Rand, who was an evaluator in the league, was a GM, was a personnel guy for nearly 2 decades. How different is it to being a pro on the pro side as opposed to being on the college side? Because college side, I would imagine you got to watch a ton more guys, especially if you're an area scout. And if you're a pro, you're on the pro side, you're more concerned with the NFL, the guys currently in the league, and how your team could benefit from finding some of those guys. Is that right?
Yeah, to a degree. I'm biased, and I've done both, obviously, but I came up as a pro guy. And there's a stigma that comes with the pro guys that you just do pro. But you also have to have, and I've always felt this way, you need to have an understanding of the draft class, right? Because one of your main jobs for the draft is putting together a team needs chart. And that team needs chart, and I think I shared one with you when we were working through our process this year, and that gives you a better understanding of what teams are targeting in front of you and behind you. And, gives your team some type of advantage in terms of how to move up and down the draft to get the people you covet. But then also you take it a step further, and having an understanding of the back end of the draft will give you a view of the players that you're going to be grading in the preseason, right? Because you're grading the bottom of the roster guys in the preseason. And a lot of times you're going to get these rookies who are thinking their way through their plays, their concepts, and what they have to do. So you might not see them at their quote unquote best. But if you have an understanding of what they look like in college, coming from a system where they have worked in the last 3, 4, 5, and I guess sometimes now 6 years where they're more comfortable, they're not thinking, it's less thinking. So it gives you a better advantage of seeing the whole picture of the player versus your first exposure is seeing them in the preseason when they're unsure of what they're doing. So it's a lot of work that goes into being a pro scout. People think, oh, the season's over, pro's done, you guys are just chilling. Nah, it keeps going. You got to be on top of free agency. You got to be on top of other leagues, players that are coming available there. And then, like I said, if you're one of the really good pro scouts, you're going to have a knowledge of the draft and the draft class, and not even the top guys, because you don't have a say-so in that part, but those day 3 guys, which again are going to be the guys you're grading during the preseason, you better have a knowledge or insight on them as well.
And you know what you didn't have back in the day that your buddies that are in the league and people that you may not know in the league, they have at their disposal, this podcast, because we do all the heavy lifting for them early on and do the homework for them.
Listen, I have had 2 GMs reach out to me and say, hey, man, we watched the show and, we listen to what you guys have to say and hear your opinions. It was like, hey, man, maybe we should hire you and Ryan to come, help us out a little bit. And I'm like, hey, Everybody has a price. You name it, it will be there.
And my price is pretty low, by the way. I work for Ran Carthon Incorporated, so I don't make as much as the big guy. So,
man, listen, we don't make as much as the big guy, whoever the big guy is. I'll just say this much: we're not doing anything for the low.
Okay, fair enough. As long as I can stay in your guest house, that's why we sort things out.
We don't start that, man. There's no guest house here.
All right. You have a mother-in-law suite?
No, man. Come on. All right. No.
Okay.
No, I
I'm
don't.
just asking. I know your mother-in-law lives down in Hollywood, and didn't know if you'd like to have her visit and stay.
No, I love my mother-in-law. I want her to visit as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I wish she would quit her job and move in with us, but that's not going to happen. But there is no mother-in-law suite. I'll say that.
All right.
Jerk.
Not in this version. All right, let's get going here. I had to get that in. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit on Monday's show. I'm going to write about this for CBS Sports. I was talking to some people, some scouts about this as well, but I want to get your opinion. So not necessarily a surprise that heading into week 9, Kellen Moore and the Saints have named Tyler Shough the starter. He came in the second half of last week's game. Spencer Rattler got benched. Again, not a surprise. Weeks 1 through 6, Spencer was playing pretty good ball on a not great team. All things considered, I think most people would say he's holding his own.
Yeah.
The last 2 weeks, he struggled with turnovers a little bit and not quite as consistent. And you said this to me yesterday. If two guys are playing at the same level, you might as well see what you have in the young guy, especially if the young guy is your guy, quotation mark. Kellen Moore didn't draft.
Well, we got to be careful here calling Tyler Shough the young guy because he might be older than Spencer Rattler.
I think he's older than Spencer. Right. Right. That's right. So at least your guy, not your young guy, because Kellen and his staff drafted Tyler 40th overall pick, QB3 in this most recent draft class. Spencer was drafted the year before in round 5 with the previous administration. So my question isn't so much what you expect from Tyler Shough, though you can tell me what you think of that. My question is, what does Tyler Shough have to do over the next 8 or 9 weeks to help himself not get Jimmy Clausen? By that, I mean, if you look at the draft board here, and Stryker has it up if you're listening, the Saints currently have the number 1 overall pick. Jets, Tennessee are 2 and 3. Tennessee doesn't need a quarterback. The Jets certainly do. At number 4, Cleveland Browns, they need a quarterback potentially. So whether you're picking 1 through 4, there could be 3 quarterbacks that go in the top 10-ish. What does Tyler Shough need to do to give himself the best opportunity not to get Jimmy Clausen and have the Saints draft a quarterback the very next year after taking him in round 2?
Yeah, Stryker, if you can you leave this graphic up because I'm going to tie this graphic in. But he just needs to show the ability to move the offense. Improve upon the numbers just in terms of the statistics, and just show that they can score points and he can run the offense efficiently the way that Kellen Moore wants the offense to be run, and just show a difference, right? A difference with him at quarterback and a difference with Spencer Rattler at quarterback. But again, to me, if those numbers are the same and you win 1 game or 2 games with Tyler Shough as your starting quarterback, to me, you got it. Especially if they maintain the number 1 overall position, you have to target a quarterback. You have to. I mean, and I get it. And you can say, hey, man, you wasted a top 50 pick on a guy that's going to be your backup. Hey, that's fine. That's admitting a mistake and correcting a mistake. Instead of just compounding on the mistake. And I don't know right now that there is a player that they're going to take at number 1 other than a quarterback that's going to that you're going to put next to or around Tyler Shough that's going to really lift the organization. Like, I just don't know that. And then if you look at the New Orleans Saints history in terms of first-round draft pick, they've taken a lot of offensive linemen, defensive linemen in the first round, and I think they need more weapons on offense to help lift this team. And so you can still get that because they'll be picking early in every round. At that point, they'll be in the top 3 or 4 picks in every round, so you can address those positions as needed. But then looking at this, you mentioned if Tennessee stays number 3, they don't need a quarterback. So depending on where they value other guys, that's a potential trade spot. So if Cleveland wants to go up 1 spot to keep a team like the Dolphins or Vegas from jumping them.
Arizona
Potentially, yeah. And so again, and Tennessee is in a place right now where they're moving a lot of guys, trying to acquire more draft capital. This is an opportunity for them to move back, 3 to 4 spots and pick up a second round pick or whatever have you, to help them and still be in the top 10 and take a guy. So this draft order in particular is going to be really, really interesting to see. And I'm just curious. I don't know, and we don't have to answer. Definitely don't want to answer it on this show. But the Jets were number 1 last week because they were winless, and then they win a game, and then they fall down to number 2, even though they have the same record as the Saints. I'm just curious as to how that whole.
That's going to be a strength of schedule thing, and
Okay.
it might be 3 or 4 or 5 steps down in terms of the order.
Okay.
But that's why if you look at the strength of schedule, the Titans' strength of schedule is 5-6-2, and then 4-9-6, 4-9-6 for the Saints and Jets, and then there must be another tiebreaker that gives the Saints the nod over the Jets as we sit here. Couple things. So I was talking to my buddy who's a scout, and I said, does Shough have to play at a Bo Nix level as a rookie in 2024 for Sean Payton? Does that have to be a Jaden Daniels level? And the other thing, as we saw in that graphic, if Tyler Shough is, say, Bo Nix, like he was as a rookie, serviceable, did some good things, room for growth if you put some players around him, what if you do trade down to 8 or 9? Where there are teams down there, the Raiders or the Cardinals, that need a quarterback? That's a huge draft haul. And then if you feel comfortable, let's say you love Fernando Mendoza, you like Tyler Shough, but the opportunity to get all those draft picks, what are those conversations like in the weeks and months leading up to deciding what you're going to do in the draft?
I mean, those are intense conversations, and those will be like really what you call situation room. If you're familiar with politics and the government, the situation room is a place that's, I don't know how many feet below the White House, where the president and his close people of his cabinet, so the leader of the Joint Chief of Staffs, the vice president, like those core group of decision makers, they're in this room by themselves making decisions, seeing things unfold. It'll be a situation room type environment, just in terms of like where they're going to go, just to keep it tight knit, and won't allow it to get out. But if you like a Fernando Mendoza or even a Ty Simpson, whomever you like, if you feel like they have the ability to really lift your program, then you take them.
Okay.
And it's really that simple, in my opinion. It's really that simple. You can get caught up in the politics of it and say, well, we took Tyler Shough and we really liked him. Yeah, you really liked him in this draft class. But, in all honesty, if you liked him that much, he should have been your week 1 starter.
Right.
And so there was something that hadn't happened over these first, 8 weeks of the season, 9 weeks of the season, that gave you pause and gave you concern. And you can't say it was maturity or anything, especially with his age. So there was something that gave you pause. So to me, if you like one of these other quarterbacks, whomever you like, if you like them at the top of the draft, you just take them.
Yeah. Now I look back from 2010 to 2023 of the quarterbacks taken in round 2. Most recently, you took Will Levis at the top of round 2. Prior to that, Kyle Trask went to Tampa Bay. Jalen Hurts, that was a home run. He was the 53rd overall pick. Drew Lock the year before that, he's been a backup primarily. Deshaun Kaiser in 2017, he didn't work out. Hackenberg out of Penn State, Stryker, he did not work out either. Jimmy G, 2014, was a second-round pick, but he also sat on the bench, and he was traded 2017. You guys traded for him in San Francisco, I believe?
2017.
Yeah, so he was on the bench for 2.5 seasons. He had to make a couple spot starts, I think, for Deflategate or whatever that was. Derek Carr was also in that draft class, a second-round pick. Geno Smith was in the draft class the year before, but remember, Geno left. Remember, he left the draft because he wasn't a first-round pick because some people thought he was going to be. I didn't blame him for leaving, but he ended up going in round 2.
No, I thought he came back. I thought he was there for the second day.
Maybe he did come back, but I think he was angry that night, which I understand. A lot of people are angry on draft night because they've been told things or had expectations that didn't work out. And then the other 4 quarterbacks taken in round 2, Brock Osweiler didn't work out. Colin Kaepernick flashed, then didn't, struggled later in his career. Andy Dalton, he's still playing. He tried to set the interception record last week for the Panthers, but he's played at a high level for the most part. And Jimmy Clausen, who I mentioned at the top, who drafted in 2010, 2011, they take Cam Newton first overall. And this is sort of feels like that could be this sort of scenario, depending how the next 2 months play out. Okay. All right. One last thing before we get to our Young Fellow Wednesdays here. On the day of our Lord, the 29th of October, 2025, what should the Saints do with their first overall pick?
Take Fernando Mendoza.
Okay. We'll see what happens. I know you like to wait things out, which would common sense would dictate that's what you should do. We haven't seen Tyler Shough throw more than a handful of passes. And we'll talk a little bit more like Tyler Shough later in the show when we talk about some of these NFL rookies. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll find out together. That's going to be an interesting storyline for a Panthers team. I mean, a Saints team. The only other thing I would mention, Ran, so Jaden Daniels was, second overall? And then CJ Stroud was second overall. Both those teams stunk before those quarterbacks got there. They got new coaches, new players around them, drafted incredibly well. And those teams went from being terrible to pretty good in a year. So that could also be the blueprint for a Saints team that maybe is only 3 or 4 players away, not 20 players away.
I'll say this, though, in the example you just gave, using both CJ and Jaden Daniels, both of those teams were new regimes, right? So they both came in with brand new head coaches who had just come in. And so new head coaches are given carte blanche to kind of shape the roster the way they want to shape it. Now, Nick Caserio in Houston had been there for a year or two prior to DeMeco Ryans coming in as the head coach. And then you had Dan Quinn and Adam Peters coming in together. So they were able to, I don't know if manipulate is the right word, but they were able to make moves around the roster to kind of better surround their quarterbacks with players. Whereas you see with this Saints team, you have a GM that's been there 20 plus years that has his way of doing things. And then you have a head coach that's been there a year that's kind of shaped the team how he wants it to be. And that also includes him taking the quarterback.
Yeah.
So that kind of could be a hindrance, if you will, just in terms of their decision making. But I think the way, Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland and Kyle Harley and Michael Parrington in their front office, the way they do things, I think they're going to see this as just a best player available that was going to just so happen to be at their biggest position of need. And if they stay at that number one spot, I truly believe they'll take a quarterback.
Yeah, it's hard to trade out that number one pick too, especially if there's a quarterback class that's worthy of it. And I think, we talk all the time that this quarterback class doesn't look good. I think it looks pretty good, and especially as we get through the fall. So it ain't like the 2022 class where, Kenny Pickett's staring you in the face. And we'll talk about Kenny Pickett at least once a show. All right, let's move on from Kenny Pickett.
Mm-hmm.
Dude's name's Pickett, and you still drafted him. You knew what was going to happen. All right. Striker, time for –
I say you love that pick as a Pittsburgh homer. You love the story. Oh, he went to Pitt. Now he just walks right down the hall, and you love that story.
I don't know if B-Mac minds me telling on him, but I was walking. B-Mac and I were at the draft in Las Vegas for work, and we were walking back to the set when the pick was made, and we were both a little surprised. I'll just leave it at that. I wasn't a huge Kenny Pickett guy coming out. All right, let's do some Young Fellow Wednesday. And let's talk about Ty Simpson. And I mentioned it off the top a little bit. South Carolina game was close until the end. Lenore Sellers had a strip sack, I believe, that set up the game-winning score, or at least allowed Alabama to hold on to the lead. They won 29-22. Ty finished 26 of 45 for 277, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, ran for 22 more yards. No fumbles, so that's good as well. This was his most inconsistent performance, Ran. And I've talked in the past about that Notre Dame game where Caleb went to Notre Dame in the first half through 3 interceptions, and everyone's like, oh, the sky is falling. And he came back in the second half and played better, and I actually felt a little bit better about Caleb because he had experienced some adversity. This wasn't this level of adversity for Ty, in part because he just kept making plays. Like, he made some mistakes early on. He missed some throws, and then he came back and looked like an NFL quarterback running the 4-minute offense and needing to make throws that he made every single time down the field. I feel better about Ty Simpson today than I did prior to this game against South Carolina. And I will ask you your thoughts on that. And then the follow-up question is, could he be quarterback one?
Yeah, I mean, depending on who you talk to, and I've had this argument with a few guys, not necessarily argument, but I've had this conversation with a few guys in studio that feel like he's the QB1. As you can see there on the graphic, he's got the best odds for going, number one overall pick. For me, you felt like the South Carolina game was probably his most inconsistent. I didn't think the Florida State game was a good game for him.
Okay.
And I went
first
back
game of the season.
Yeah, I went back and I watched the Florida State game, I watched the Georgia game, I watched the South Carolina game of this year. And for me, I think you see more traits than you do consistency at this point. I think you see everything you need to see from in terms of having the arm strength, the ability to drive the ball, his platform and his base that he throws from, I think are good. I don't think he's all that accurate. I think his accuracy is probably above average, in my opinion. I think he does a good job of extending plays, and I love his mechanics in terms of play action pass, the way he really extends the ball and flashes the ball, gives you the rollover on the fake. I think he does all those things well. But for me, it's the lack of anticipation as a passer. Now, one thing I kept, going back, and I probably watched way too much tape of him last night, just in terms of really diving into the concepts. And there's a bunch of stuff, and we're going to talk about one of the other quarterbacks here later, where it's a little bit different. But the footwork and the drops in this offense don't always match the route concepts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
You give him sometimes, man, he's already in the gun and he's taken, a big 5-step drop. So now he's sitting really deep in the pocket, which now puts the offensive lineman at a disadvantage, right? Because now it's easier for them to get edged when the guy's sitting back way deep. And then these routes are either too short or too deep. So everything doesn't always match up. And I think some of that leads to the lack of anticipation.
Hey, I don't want to interrupt you, but let me ask you this. So when you talk to Ty Simpson at the Combine or the Senior Bowl or wherever you talk to him, you bring him in for a 30 visit, and he says that's the offense, that's the way Ryan Grubbs, the OC, wants to do it. Do you believe him? Is that a situation where you want him to take responsibility? Because I know, talking to Rick about this in the past, you want your franchise guys to take ownership of everything. But if Ryan Grubbs say take a 5-step drop on a route concept that requires 3 and out, what should he say?
I mean, and that, just tell the truth. I mean, because at the end of the day, if he says, well, hey, look, this is what Coach Grubbs wanted, and so I'm just doing, but I understand where you're coming from, but this is how we did it. Right.
Okay.
That's not throwing anybody under the bus. That's just saying that's what it is. And then I'm sure we all have contacts at Alabama. Bama is one of the few schools in college football that, as it pertains to scouts, they roll out the red carpet. You can come in, you can speak to anybody will talk to you, and that's what's always been great about Bama. And so having you can get that question answered.
Okay. Well, there you
go. So I like this kid though. I don't want to sound like I'm coming off negative. I do like him. I think if he came out right now, for me, as I continue to work through these quarterbacks, he would be QB 2 or 3 for me right now.
Yep.
Personally, I would like to see him go back to school. I would like to see him go back to school, get another year of consistency, because this is his first year as a starter. And we've seen how in recent years how this movie ends when guys come into the league, they're drafted really high for being 1-year starter. There are flashes of his game that he reminds me of Drew Brees with a stronger arm, where I can see that. And a lot of that is the measurables, just his ability to know where to go with the football, his ability to pull the ball down and take the green grass that's ahead of him as a runner. I like his competitive nature. And like you said, just his ability to play through situations and not be rattled. I like that, but maybe I just like Fernando Mendoza a little too much. I just think what I've seen out of him is just been really impressive. So for me right now, I will have Ty Simpson at QB 2 or QB 3.
Yeah, look, man, Fernando's played a lot more ball. He's played under duress consistently at Cal. This year's been obviously a little better for him. He's got some dudes to throw to. He is as composed in the pocket as any quarterback in this class. And, he's bigger. You could argue he has a bigger arm. Ty has a pretty good arm. Whatever. They can both make all the throws. And you could argue he's a little bit more accurate. I mean, yeah, those are the conversations you're having. Those are rich people problem conversations. Because you're again, not to go back to the 2020 club, but at least you have options and they're good options. My comp for Ty, and you'll probably hate this. I may have said it before, but I said it on Twitter and people absolutely hated it. I thought if you go back in time to when this guy was in college, he is a souped up version of Mac Jones in that he's a better athlete with a bigger arm, but he does a lot of the same things Mac does. It sounds like you think Mac's a better anticipatory thrower and has a better feel for playing the game. But Mac hadn't played a lot of ball either. He played 4 or 5 games a year before because Tua got hurt with the hip, and then he started his final year where I think they won the national title.
Yeah, I think this guy, like I said, this guy is a much better mover than Mac. I think his arm is stronger than Mac's. I do think that Mac was a better anticipatory passer. I thought Mac was more accurate to this point than Ty Simpson. So
he also had 3 first-round picks he was throwing to.
Yeah, and that was the beauty of it, right? Like Mac played point guard for Alabama.
Yeah, he did. That's right.
He didn't try to do too much. He played point guard. Oh, that was the other thing too. With this guy, I'm glad you said that with those weapons. My biggest issue with Ty Simpson was his deep ball accuracy.
Okay.
And in those 3 games that I viewed, I could have missed one, but I did not see him connect on any deep shot that they took downfield. And the one that they could have connected on was in the Georgia game, and Ryan Williams just flat out dropped it.
Right.
But
so Ryan Williams,
everything else was either he put way too much air under it that allowed the DB to recover, or it was thrown just short where the receiver had a step but then had to come back, and put it in a jump ball situation. So I didn't see the accuracy downfield. It wasn't an arm strength issue. It wasn't that he couldn't get the ball down there, but it was just being able to connect with the receiver. And I didn't see that in those 3 games I watched.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Ryan Williams has struggled with drops this year, and I'm sure he's frustrated. It's frustrating to watch because he's such a good player. And then they have Jeremy Bernard, who we haven't talked about yet, but we'll talk about, the other wide receiver who has a chance to be a top 70, top 75 pick, and we'll get to him sooner rather than later. But that is certainly worth noting. All right. Let's take our conversation to an older gentleman, and Joey Aguilar, who was at App State for a good bit. Started at Diablo Valley Community College. You know where Diablo Valley Community College is?
Somewhere in Arizona.
Close, California. I had to look it up. It's probably pronounced Diablo as well, so I apologize for mispronouncing it.
Yeah,
Then he went to App State for 2 years.
You didn't take Spanish in high school.
Sadly, I did. You know what my Spanish name was? Courtesy of Miss Godwin, Raul. What's up? I look like a Raul.
You do, actually.
Yeah, right? I lived in Arizona we lived there 2 years, and they didn't know whether I was Mexican, Native American, or me. So I blended right in, except for the part not being able to speak Spanish, but that's a conversation for another time. So Joey Aguilar went to App State for 2 years, and then he was at UCLA for a hot minute until Nico Iamaleava came from Tennessee to UCLA, and Joey said, you know what? I'm going to go to Tennessee. And I think it's pretty easy to say that Joey made the better of the 2 decisions. We've talked about Nico on the show, and I think he's had a pretty good season, but that UCLA team is not very good, and hopefully Nico comes back to school. Joey will be 25 in June, so there's that. Doesn't necessarily matter so much, I don't think, for quarterbacks. He's got a big arm, and you have to have a big arm to play in this Tennessee offense where you're throwing the ball 70 yards sideways a lot of times with these wide splits. I thought he's pretty good in the pocket. I thought he got through his reads on time. He's pretty good handling muddy pockets, and he can throw without setting his feet. And again, he has that big arm, so he can make throws while his feet are not set. I thought he was a pretty good deep ball passer, allow the wide receiver to run underneath it. And it certainly helps to have guys like Chris Brazzell, who we've talked about on this show, who you just throw it up and he will take care of the rest. And he's a pretty good athlete. He's not going to be a guy that you build an offense around to run it, but he can run if he needs to. Let's start with Brazzell, because here's my fear with Chris Brazzell, number 17. Is he a Jalen Hyatt one-trick pony, or can he do more? And it's hard to tell in this offense. So how do you figure that out when you're determining how high you want to draft? And he's a different body type too. So let's not confuse that. But those are the questions I have about Brazzell, because I don't know what else he can do besides run go routes.
Yeah, I like him more than I liked Jalen Hyatt coming out, because I think he's running the routes and everything that they've asked him to do, right? And this offense is a very tricky offense to watch in terms of evaluating receivers in the quarterback position, because so much of the concepts of this offense are conversions where they beat you with splits. And then, the route is either you run deep or you run a slant or a post off of it. And so it's timing for the quarterback and the receiver, and they have to be on the same page and how they both see the coverage. That's why I kind of struggle evaluating quarterbacks in this system.
Yep.
In their head.
Hendon Hooker is a perfect example.
Yeah, and so I really have issues there. But in terms of Chris Brazzell, I think Chris Brazzell's hands are way better than Jalen Hyatt's hands.
Yeah.
And I just think he'll be, even if he is a one-trick pony, I think his one trick is really good.
It's a good trick.
And he can his ball skills and ability to track the ball and go up and actually come down with the football is much more impressive than Jalen Hyatt.
Okay, what about Joey? Because I had not watched a lot of Aguilar this season. They beat the pants off of Washington 56-34 by the time it was all said and done. He threw for nearly 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I was pleasantly surprised by getting a chance to watch him play. I know he struggled with accuracy at times earlier this season, just sort of the broadcast games I watched. But going back, I was to the point where I was like, okay, this kid's probably going to get drafted, and he has a chance to be a backup at some point.
Yeah, I think he will get drafted. I see him as a career backup in the league, and I see him as a guy that I think he can manage an NFL offense, and I think he'll do what the play caller asks him to do, which is all you could hope for out of your backup quarterback. My comp for him was a guy like Brandon Allen, a guy who's kind of bounced around and been, backup in a lot of places, and you just trust him to go in the game. You don't want him to have to play an extended amount of plays.
Right.
I mean, the games for you. You don't want to have him play 5-6 games, whereas you trust a Mac Jones to play 5-6 games as your backup quarterback / starter. To me, when it came to Joey Aguilar, and I think I agree with you. I think there are things that when you're watching him, you're like, hey, you know what, this guy's pretty good, and you kind of hold on to that. But I don't think he has any one trait that stands out, if that makes sense. I think he is solid, above average, adequate, whatever synonym you want to use, like across the board. I think he does have good size. I think he's like 225 or somewhere in the 220s.
Yeah, verified 6'3", 6'3", 221.
Yeah, so the size is good. I thought his anticipation, his arm strength, his accuracy was all above average. I think what not necessarily hurts him, but what's going to be an issue for him at the next level is for him to deliver the ball. He has to load up. So you see him, if I'm dropping back and for him to deliver the ball, you see a slight dip before, and most guys can stand there, come through their hips, flick the ball, where he has a slight load up. And if you're throwing against, the Patrick Surtains and, certain guys who play the game from a cerebral standpoint, as soon as they see that dip, they're breaking. And you got to be able to drive the ball and get it out. So I think that's going to hurt him. And then I just didn't think he threw the tightest ball.
Interesting. Spiral-wise, you mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought the further he had to push the ball down the field, you saw the ball flutter and kind of dilate. It died on him, as the ball went downfield. So I think if you get him in the right system, I think he can manage the game for you, but I think he's a career backup.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I'm glad we got a chance to talk about him because that Tennessee team's playing pretty well, and it was unclear whether that was the right move for Aguilar or Nico Imaliava, and clearly Aguilar made the right decision, and he's had a good season. So you add him to the list of quarterbacks we have now talked about, and that list must be approaching 20 at this point because we talked about a ton of guys so far this fall. Make it 21, Ran, and this is a submission by producer Stryker. He said, let's talk Blake Shapen. Shapen, quarterback out of Mississippi State. And I'm like, Striker, I ain't watched no Mississippi State football on purpose, but I went back and watched all his throws, and they lost to Texas in overtime. They were whooping up on him, and the offense got a little tight down the stretch. I didn't watch the game, but I went back and watched Shapen's throws, so I don't know what the defense was not doing against he who shall not be named. But in this game, Blake set career high in passing yards. He had 381, and tied a career high in passing touchdowns. He had 4. He's a former baseball player. Like, he can ball out, like, legit. I think he was playing. He transferred from, where did he transfer? Baylor. So he played baseball at Baylor. He had opportunities to play in formerly the Pac-12. I think he gave up baseball to focus on football last season. He's been now at Mississippi State for 2 years. He has a strong arm. He can spin it, man. But he was at his best throwing short and intermediate balls. Didn't throw with a ton of anticipation. And a lot of times on those deep curls and comebacks, it almost like he had to see the eyes of his wide receiver before throwing it. And to your previous point about playing against big-time dudes like a Patrick Surtain II, for example, that's just not going to work. It'll work in the SEC occasionally. But I thought he played a pretty good game for about 45 minutes, and then the protection broke down at times in that fourth quarter and overtime, and other times it felt like he was seeing ghosts and was leaving clean pockets. But overall, big game. Mississippi State should have won that game, for being honest. And you could argue, outplayed Archquavius. He's also older. He'll be 25 in January. But a big game for him. And I don't think I think he feels like a PFA, priority free agent. But Striker wanted to talk about him, so let's talk about him.
So it's funny, and I know a lot of it is probably the jersey number, the stature, if you will. But one of the notes I took down, I was like, I bet this dude grew up loving Johnny Manziel.
Oh, that's a good call. I was like, who is he going with here?
Because you could tell by some of the way he moves around, the way he carries himself in the game, you could see some of that. I think the ball, it was interesting to hear you say that he's a former baseball guy. And I'll be interested to know what position he played. He probably was an infielder because he can get the ball out quick. I think the ball comes off his hand quick. He did have a few passes where the ball sailed high on him.
Yeah.
And to me, a lot of that was just his stature in the pocket. His footwork.
Hey, he was a shortstop.
There you go.
You're good at this.
And so I think for him, a lot of footwork. I was just talking about the concepts of Ty Simpson not always matching up with the footwork and what they were doing. Well, a lot of Blake Shippen stuff was catch, quick flip, and then get the ball out.
It was like he was turning two.
It was almost like you teach some guys to teach, a punch and drag. If you watch Baker Mayfield now at Tampa Bay, he doesn't do really big drops. It's a lot of punch and drag footwork, right? Which allows him to set up quicker. So this guy was like mechanical. It was catch.
He was.
And then, then go with the football. So I think the big thing for him, man, is like he's got to learn. I don't think he has feel in the pocket. There are some times, man, where things are caving in around him and he's just locked in on a guy downfield and doesn't feel it. And he took some really bad sacks.
He got smoked in I think in overtime, one of those sacks was pretty bad.
Yeah, and that play in particular took them out of field goal range.
That's right. Yep.
And gave them ability to tie the game or even go up, whatever it was, whatever the situation was. He took some bad sacks. He took some bad sacks the week before against Florida late in that game. And he also had them in the game to win it. Now, Florida's defense wasn't making necessary plays on the perimeter. And it's no fault of his own. He threw the pick at the end of the Florida game. They ran like a zone blitz where they dropped the big D tackle out, and he just threw the ball kind of right to the D tackle. But he'll be a guy that'll get invited to a camp, may be okay during the preseason, and we'll see if he ends up on somebody's practice squad. But like I said, this guy, he's just a solid college football quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. And thanks for Striker for putting that on our radar because I had not watched him previously other than on television. That is interesting that you talk about the way he gets through his reads, because it feels like when you watch quarterbacks do warm-up drills at the beginning of practice and they're just going through their reads against air and they reset their shoulders, it's almost like they're turning two. And that stuck out to me. I did, and subconsciously, but you don't often see that at that level, or certainly the level above. Not that, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing, but it was just an interesting way for him to get from 1 to 2. Felt like he didn't often get off of 2. It was either 1 to check down, which is better than nothing.
So,
yeah, but curious nonetheless. All right, that's it for our quarterbacks this week. Remember, if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify with a player you want us to check out, we will absolutely do it, quarterback or otherwise. So make note of that. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we have some breaking news that we'll get to later. That's how we roll. We do breaking news later. But I want to talk about some of these non-quarterbacks who balled out last week, because we haven't talked about them yet, and I'm pretty excited about some of these guys who are going to have a chance to be top 50 picks. We'll do that right after this break.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, Ran. I'm going to mix up the order here, so hopefully it doesn't throw you off too much, just so it'll make a little bit more sense. That's on me because I put the order in wrong. But I want to start with Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington. And this guy's unofficially, let me double check, but I think he's unofficially 6'4", 209. And he moves like he's 6 feet, 195 in terms of the way he is in and out of breaks. He's not stiff at all. He plays big. He's a punt returner. He has returned a punt return for a touchdown this year. And the way he moved in that punt return looked like, what was the joystick's name? I can't remember.
Dante Hall.
Yeah, I said, man, that's Dante Hall out there who took some stretch medicine. I think he's surprisingly elusive for his size. And then he will run over you too. Don't get me wrong. He'll run a shallow and then drag 2 or 3 guys into the end zone. He plays with strong hands. I think he has 0 drops this season. And in this game against Illinois, where they whooped the nonsense out of these guys, 13 targets, 10 catches, 153, and a touchdown. And he also threw a touchdown pass to Jonah Coleman, who we'll talk about in a second, too, the running back on a little trick play. And he wasn't a quarterback in high school, as far as I could tell from looking that up. So here's my question. You can tell me what you think of Denzel Boston, first of all. Is he better than Rome Odunze coming out of Washington?
No, I'd say the easy answer is no. And I will say, in throwing him on, like watching the game, I was like, man, I could see some Rome Odunze in his game. But I'll say this. I think Denzel Boston is a short to intermediate route runner. I don't think he's going to threaten anybody vertically. I don't think he has the speed to take the top off the defense. Now, I will say you see speed with the ball in his hands. And so you see a different level of speed. I love his physicality running after the catch. I don't see him as being like overly elusive, if you will. But I thought he ran physical, ran hard. Like you mentioned, his hands, he has really good hands to extend and pluck away from his frame. I just think lateral separation is going to be a minus for him.
Okay. Like on the short and intermediate routes?
Yeah, I don't think he's just going to be able to get to the top of the route and break you off and be able to pull away from anybody, right? I think
I'm laughing because we need that gif of you going.
So I think it's one of those situations for me. He'll be a day 2 pick. I think he'll be a day 2 pick. I don't see him going in the first. Oh man,
okay, good. I'm glad we're talking about, because I love me some Denzel. So he's obviously, I hate to bring this name up, but it's the first one that comes to mind. He's way better than N'Keal Harry, who ended up going to the first round a few years ago to the Patriots, in terms of ability to separate and athleticism and all that stuff. You agree with that?
Yeah, and I wasn't in the same way. Like, I wasn't the biggest N'Keal Harry fan either. Coming out. And what's funny is, I'm glad Stryker pulled this up. So I didn't have him in my top 5 coming into
over the summer.
Yeah. So I'll say this, like, I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. I like the size, the ball skills, the hands. And like I mentioned, I think he's a short to intermediate route runner that he's going to have to play between the hashes, in my opinion, to be successful. I don't think he's going to threaten anybody on the perimeter or the edge, and it's not a negative. That's just what's in his body. I just didn't see the required quickness to create separation, at the NFL level. Now, again, separation and that's why I was specific and said lateral separation, because you can create separation with your size, you can create separation with your strength, and it's just the way the game is, just the way physics and nature is. But I just don't see this guy as a lateral separator, and probably nor should he be at 6'4".
He's returning punts effectively. He's nodding his head. That means okay. And question mark.
In all honesty, I mean, if you go back to Dante Pettis was statistically the greatest punt returner in college football history.
Yeah.
Right. And he didn't have success at it at the NFL level.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see a lot of 6'4" punt returners either.
No. And again, like, it's what happens in the NFL level is like punt return is one of those things where you have to have dynamic start-stop quickness.
Yep.
And you have to be more than just a 9 to, we'll say 8 to 10 average yards per punt return guy to be considered a dynamic punt returner, right? And again, I'm not taking anything away from his game, but I just see the guy more as a day 2 pick. I don't see him going around one. And if he does, great. We'll just see how the movie ends 3 years from now.
All right. I'm a little higher on Denzel. Might be a lot higher on Denzel than you. You said second round, so not that much higher. For what it's worth, he plays 80% outside, 15+% in the slot. You think maybe, does he have to be a big slot, or can he play outside and just run short and intermediate routes? No,
he could be a big slot. I mean, Marcus Colston made a living in the NFL. He's the Saints.
I'm laughing because he's a tight end at Hofstra.
Well, that's Hofstra's fault.
Fair enough. There you go. That's the answer there.
He came to the NFL, was a super productive player in Sean Payton's system in New Orleans, and I think he's the Saints' all-time leader in receptions as a big slot. Like,
not helping Denzel's case, it helps in your version of Denzel, not in my version. They line him up in line, and he will block the nonsense out of defensive ends on down blocks and like crackback blocks. Like he takes it very seriously. So he's a really good blocker. Why are you smiling?
I'm smiling because my second to last note, and this is from summer tape because I got separate notes on my sheet here from this season. I hadn't put it all together yet, but coming off of summer tape, my second to last line is, I wonder if he could put on weight and become an F tight end.
Trying to turn him into Darnell Washington.
No,
Can he gain 200 pounds and be Darnell Washington?
So,
man, all right. So we used to do a little thing called dollar bets around here. This is going to be our first dollar bet. So, Stryker, make a note. I don't know if you still have the graphic.
So what's the bet?
I'm going to tell you the bet. I'm not just going to make the bet on your behalf. Here's the bet. Does Darnell Washington go higher than or lower than the 32nd pick? Is he a first-round pick or not a first-round pick? You can take whichever side you want.
No, I don't think he's a first-round pick.
Okay. Good. So I think he is. So that'll be the dollar bet, Stryker. And then Rand can give me 100 pennies when I win this bet.
Oh, because trust and believe you will get 100 pennies. You're not just getting a flat dollar.
You're going to write me 100 checks for 1 cent each?
I would do that. I'm petty.
You would do that. Hey, Stryker, one more request. Will you put that summer scouting list back up one more time, just so I can give Rand his flowers, as the kids say? He had Elijah Surratt on there at number 4. And, let's do another dollar bet. Who gets drafted higher, Elijah Surratt out of Indiana or Denzel Boston?
Honestly, here's what I'm going to tell you. I think it's going to come down to who runs better.
I think Denzel will run better. We can go crazy on the dollar bets today if you want.
I think they're both going to run in the 4.5s.
Okay. Well, you got 2 more dollar bets you got to answer. So who gets drafted first? And then you got to determine who's going to be faster.
I'm going to stick with it because in our last mock draft, I had Elijah Surratt going at the bottom of the first. So okay. I'm gonna say Denzel Boston dollar bet goes day 2, and then I'll say Elijah Surratt will get drafted before him.
Okay. All right. All right, make a note, striker.
And for what it's worth, I just text a West Coast scout that covers that area, and then I text him. I said, Denzel Boston, the first round pick ? And his response was day 2, in my opinion.
Yeah, but you know this better than anybody. Everybody in the league is always tamping down expectations. No one wants to say what the truth is. I'm here to speak the truth, okay? We'll find out in 176 days or whatever it is. All right. Got the dollar bet tracker machine going here. All right, let's turn to some running backs, guys, position. And we're going to start with Denzel's teammate, Jonah Coleman, who I had not had an opportunity to watch. But I'll save my comp for later. I don't want to get you distracted. But he is officially verified 5'8.5", 227. And he is thickly built, in my opinion. You can tell me if I'm wrong about that. He is a tough runner. Tell me what you think of this. I thought he did a good job of being patient at the line of scrimmage, runs with a low center of gravity because he doesn't have a choice. He will run between the tackles. Like, he's not looking to bounce everything, but he does have the ability to turn the corner. I don't know how fast he is in space. I thought he's really good in pass protection, given the constraints of college guys being asked to pass block. Also, as a threat as a receiver. I wanted to see him run. Like, he would break tackles at the line of scrimmage. I wanted to see him run through more arm tackles at the second and third level. I wanted to see more of that. Still a lot to like. I think he's going to be one of the top running backs drafted. What do you think of Jonah Coleman?
Man, he's a tank. Like you said the verified measurables was what, 5'8.5"?
227, yep.
227. So that would have been from the spring. I know he was a verified 222 probably during camp.
Okay.
So I don't know what his current weight is, but like you said, I see him as a good 3-down backup running back. Like you said, he's short, he's compact built, runs with a good low center of gravity. I thought he had vision, feet, feel for setting his block and attack increases. You mentioned it, and we talk about it here on the show. He runs with that patience to it, explode through it. Mentality. So you saw that with good contact balance. I do think he's more quick than he is fast. I don't think he has, the top end speed. And I see, like you talked about, I said he can get on the second level, but he lacks that home run speed, elusiveness to, take it the distance. I liked his willingness and pass protection to be able to face up guys. Again, he's going to have to work on it, as all young running backs will have to do. But he's willing. And to me, if you shows that you're willing, then we can coach you on the rest of it. My big worry for him, that as a backup running back who's 5'8.5", like, if he's not a part of the rotation, like, where's his fit on special teams? Where can he play on special teams? He's going to probably be too small in most capacities on punt teams. So at most, he's probably going to have to be a personal protector. He's not going to have the necessary length playing on the wing. Don't know where he is just in terms of where he's going to fit on the kickoff team. Maybe he's a contained guy too, on L2 or R2 on the kickoff team. Now, he does have a chance to be a kickoff returner or off returner in this new format, just because you can. And Pete Prisco and I, we were having this argument. He was like, why can't you teach a wide receiver or someone who's more explosive to return kicks? I'm like, this is different now because the way you have the walls and the lines set up on both sides, and then you restrict that zone between, the actual kickoff team and the kickoff return team, is essentially like a O-line, D-line. And
right,
so you put guys back there that are used to reading blocks and being able to, whereas you put a receiver back there in the old format, guys, they're just running the daylight.
Right.
And that just makes more sense. That's why you're probably starting to see more running backs playing back there, because you can essentially treat it like the first offensive snap, of a drive. So my worry for Jonah is, where's he going to fit on special teams if he is your third running back?
So he has 3 kick returns so far this season. Only had 1 last season. No punt returns that I know about. You bring up an interesting point. If you're not a starter in the NFL, and that's 22 of 53 roster spots, do you have to be able to play special teams if you're running back 2, wide receiver 4, whatever? Tight end two?
If you're a high end two, no, because
Okay.
there's a role for you on offense, right? Like, so you're going to probably play 15 to 20 snaps on offense. But if you're the third running back, you're up because you're going to you have to contribute on special teams.
Right.
In the few games that I had to play, throughout and I only played in real games with the Colts. I was up as the third, but then I was on kickoff team. I was probably the kickoff returner or off returner, depending on where we were that week, and I was on punt return. So you have to at least be on, at minimum, 2 of the big 4.
Yep.
And so you have to, but again, because of his stature and his size, that if he's not in the game plan to carry the ball. And I'll give you another example. When I was with the Rams in St. Louis, we had a guy named Chase Reynolds. He was essentially our 4th running back. And we would go into the game most times with 3 running backs. But in the event that one of our top 2 guys went down, we would bring a guy up from the practice squad and not put Chase in that role because Chase was just up to play special teams.
Gotcha.
And if we had to end the game with Chase at running back because the top 2 guys got hurt, then cool. But the next week he likely wouldn't be starting because that just wasn't his role.
Right.
Because he was so good on special teams that he was up as the third running back just to play special teams.
All right, you ready for my comp?
Shoot. And I'll give you mine after.
All right. I had 2 names, but I went with this one. I'm going to go to the other one if you don't like this one. J.K. Dobbins vibes?
No.
Is J.K. more explosive in your mind?
Yeah, I think J.K. Dobbins is more explosive. He's a little more of a rugged runner. And this was I'm thinking all pre-knee injury, because even post-knee injury, you could see the stiffness, but he still runs hard. He still has contact balance. And I think they're probably from top end speed are probably similar, even though J.K. has ripped off some really big runs over the last couple of years since returning from the knee injury.
Yep.
But I really like J.K. Dobbins coming out. And I think he was a 2nd-round pick.
He was the Jonathan Taylor draft. He was in that draft with Cam Akers. Yeah, all those guys were 2nd rounders.
See, I see Jonah as a day 3 pick.
Oh, okay. Because I have him as a mid-day 2 pick right now. So that also informs your decision on this comp that you don't like.
Yeah.
All right. Who's your comp? I'm not going to say it now because it's the same conversation as J.K. He was also a 2nd-round pick, I believe. So I won't even.
Who's your other one?
Ray Rice.
Nah.
Which one's worse, J.K. or Ray Rice in terms of the comp to Jonah?
Ray Rice is worse.
You think Ray was a better running back than Jonah, than J.K.?
Yeah, Ray Rice was a legitimate starting running back in the NFL.
I don't know if he'll be as good as Ray was early in his career, but I think Jonah's going to be able to contribute. Who's your comp?
My comp was Zach Stacy. You probably don't even remember him.
I remember Zach Stacy. He played for the Rams.
Yeah, similar bill. Now Zach had a productive rookie year. I think he was almost 1,000-yard rusher, and we took him. I want to say in the 5th round, 5th or 6th round. But they were similar stature, 5'8" and some change. I think Zach probably at combine was 212, but he probably played at like 220 to 225.
5'9", 224. Look at you. You're pretty good at this. 5th round pick out of Vandy.
Yeah, and I think Jonah may have had better top end speed than Zach, but both guys had vision, they had feet, and they were a tough tackle. So that was I felt like when I was watching him, I'm like, oh yeah, he looks like Zach.
I will say this, and it's hard. I've said this forever. It's hard for me to sort of evaluate the running backs in terms of where to slot them because you have guys like Jaylen Warren, who was undrafted, who is very good at his job in Pittsburgh. But if there was a redraft, he's still not going first 2 or 2.5 rounds, maybe taking the bottom of the 3rd or something if we're starting over. But the point is, you can get these guys in day 3. And I don't know if Jonah.
You sound like Pete now. Oh, this is what Pete does. You just do this with a running back. You take him from here, you put him here. Take him here, you put him here.
Do you know that as Pete bragged to you, Pete's our colleague who's, I won't say how old he is. He's older than us.
65. I'm going to throw it out there.
And he is generously 5'4". Did he tell you what position he played in high school?
No, I know. We talk about it. He
Yeah.
played O-line.
And Steve Hutchinson had gone to his high school, of course, after Pete. And every time Pete sees Steve, who's a Hall of Famer, I believe, he tells Steve that I'm the best offensive lineman ever to come out of this high school. And sure, Steve chuckles. All right. Yeah, I'm trying to prop up these running backs. I said day 2 for Jonah Coleman. I want to hear what you think about Hollywood Smothers, running back out of NC State. Now, he is built a little differently. I think he's high cut. You can tell me if I disagree with that. He feels like his legs are certainly much longer than Jonah's. Short waist guy. But I think he's, let me see what he is unofficially. I think he's a sub 200.
I think they said 195
Yeah.
was the number I saw.
Yep, 5'10", 195. This dude runs angry. And he feels like a high knee runner in that when you knees and elbows, when you try to tackle him, you're going to get either the knee or the elbow. And he will run through arm tackles despite his quote-unquote size. I think he's an asset in the pass game. They use him a lot on just sort of running back routes, quotation mark. Ian out there in the slot running Christian McCaffrey routes. Very good contact balance. And he ain't going to give you a bunch of pass protection, I think in part because of his size. But the two words I kept coming back to were explosive and angry. And really good in sort of zone schemes where he can one cut and go it. All right, I'll tell you what I wrote down here, but you can disagree with it. He is not Isaiah Pacheco, not even close, but he runs with that sort of anger, even though he's probably 20, 25 pounds lighter than Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that at all. Like, I'm looking through my notes right here. Contact balance was a positive for me. You mentioned I thought he was shifty. I thought he had good feet. And the note I have in here, he runs stronger than his size, which made me I wrote a little note right here to myself to check with an area scout to see what the verified weight is.
Do you think he's more or less than 195?
I think he probably is a little more. He didn't look quite 195 to me, per se. And maybe that was a lot of just the way he ran, the violence in which he ran. Now, I said he was solid in pass protection. And the reason why I said he was because I thought he was really competitive. And again, we just talked about it with Jonah. In this day and age with the running back position, to me, all you have to do is show the willingness that you're not turning it down. You're not, getting bulldozed into the lap of the quarterback. Just show the willingness, the toughness, the fight, and then the technique and stuff will be taught to you. Because a lot of times you don't really see that in the early part. And I remember certain guys, like I'll use Todd Gurley as an example. That was the knock people had on Todd Gurley coming out. It was like, oh, he can't pass pro. And I'm like, they were like, oh, he's not tough. I'm like, have you ever watched Todd Gurley run? I'm like, you can't watch him run the football and say he's not tough.
Right.
I said, guys like that just have to know that pass pro is an expectation. And at Georgia, he carried the ball so much and he was such a focal point of the offense that if he wasn't getting the ball on third down, then that was his down off.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, again, like I like that. And I even have down in my notes here his low center of gravity in the way he ran. Like, I think this is a guy that will be another like day 3 pick that will make a team and he'll be able to have more of a role on special teams. Right, because I could see him playing kickoff. I could see him being on the punt team as a wing. I could see him being a kickoff returner or off returner. I think I could see. Well, not think. I know I could see him playing as an edge guy on punt return. Like, there's a role for Hollywood Smothers to be your third back that's active on game day because he can give you something on special teams, and I think there might be a little role for him on offense to work him in.
Okay, I feel another dollar bet coming on, Producer Striker, and I will double down and make it easier for you. I'm going to say Jonah Coleman and Hollywood Smothers both get drafted no later than the 3rd round.
You're saying both?
Both going. I was going to say one or the other, but I don't want to cheat you out of your 50 cents. So I'm going to say both get drafted in the top 99.
I'll take that. I'll take that bet. So,
okay,
Striker, I hope you're writing these down for real because I want my $3.
Yeah, year 1 when I did this with Rick, I got beat pretty badly. Year 2, I made some improvements on my scouting department. We did a little better. I think I won by $1 on the last day of the draft.
I want to go back to Denzel Boston because
you want to change already? You got nervous?
No, I'm not changing. I texted the area scout, and I told you I asked him Denzel Boston, first round pick, ? And he said day 2 in my opinion. I said, having that argument in real time on the pod. And he said, which side are you on? I said, I'm on the day 2 side. He was like, I already know you don't like guys who can't separate.
All right. Well, I'm gonna send this to Denzel Boston, and we'll get his rebuttal in terms of hope it's some sizzle reel of him separating. All right. We'll find out together. Oh, I know what I wanted to mention in terms of Denzel. T. Higgins didn't run a great time at the combine or wherever it was, pro day, whenever it was. And that sort of dinged him a little bit, ended up going in the second round, in part because separation, quotation marks, he should have been a first round pick. Is there any T. Higgins like, oh, here we go. Striker's got the dollar bets written down.
Okay.
Is there any T. Higgins like separation issues that you see in Denzel? And the follow-up is, why didn't T go in the first round?
I can't remember why T. I don't think it was all on field, if my memory serves me correct.
All right. Well, that's a different conversation.
I can't remember. I can't remember T. Higgins' draft right now. I will say this, and because I was watching him before we came on. I was watching Carnell Tate before we came on, and I hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. And this was because I'm only one game of 2025 in. And this was based off of
wide receiver Carnell Tate.
My summer tape. I said, this is my last couple lines. I was like, I appreciate the production from a number 3 wide receiver that was the 5th option in Ohio State's offense. Think he will produce playing opposite of Jeremiah Smith. Feels like a T. Higgins / day 2 type of pick to me. That was off of the summer tape. To me, I'd bump him up into day 1.
Yes, sir.
And even now, like he's not getting a ton of targets, but when you watch him move and you see his speed and his explosiveness and his ability to sink his hips, get in and out of his breaks, his ball skills, his ability to track the football, like I think Carnell Tate will be a legitimate good number 2 starting wide receiver out the gate. And so I have him. And again, what I just read you was based off of summer tape.
Yep.
And that was watching the Indiana game, the Michigan game, and the Texas game from last year. And where are my notes? My notes are right here. And so this year, I've already watched the Texas game. I have the Illinois game queued up and the Wisconsin game queued up. And like I said, right now, I have him going day 1.
We talked about him over the summer, and I didn't see it over the summer. He is balling out this year. He is my wide receiver 1.
Hey, Striker, just for ish and giggles, can we pull up the wide receiver list from summer
scouting? He is currently my wide receiver 1.
1 sec to grab it.
Take your time, Striker. I have him ahead of Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. You okay with that?
No, but again, I need to. And look, if you look at my sheet that I have right here, I watched those 2 back to back. I'm gonna watch those 2 back to back. So,
you had Carnell number 3 over the summer. I didn't have him on my top 5. My top 2, Antonio Williams was injured earlier this season, and Clemson stinks. Aaron Anderson, and that offense is a hot mess. Nick Anderson, he's blocking. He's not even catching passes. The transfer from Oklahoma. Jordan Tyson and Eric Singleton Jr. Eric Singleton's having a pretty good year. You had Jordan Tyson 1, Antonio Williams, Carnell Tate, and Elijah Surratt, and Deion Burks, who we've talked about before.
Yeah, but I think when you get to my 5A, 5B, I think it falls off pretty quick. Eugene Wilson has become like a non-factor, even though he's really talented. He's become a non-factor in that Gator offense. And then Deion Burks, it's just been high hopes and well wishes from his time at Purdue to transferring, and he's just never. He had the one game earlier this year where you're like, "Hey, this is what we've been waiting for," but we
talked about him
consistently. You know what I mean? So.
And we haven't talked about John Matier in a while, but he has not been the same since that hand injury.
Yeah.
And we'll circle back on him as well. But Carnell looks special. It's too early to do a dollar bet on Carnell versus Jordan Tyson. They're both good players. They're both going to go in the first round. All right, let's turn our attention to the defense. And I put this young man on the list because I was watching the Ole Miss game this weekend where they beat Oklahoma. and your guy, Lane Kiffin out there, he loves talking to people. He was talking to one of the defensive tackles in Oklahoma right before he did his interview. He can't help himself, but hey, it ain't bragging if you're winning. Zxavian Harris, number 51, the enormous defensive tackle for Ole Miss. He is he verified? I think he's verified. He's like 6. What is he? He is verified 6'7", 6071, 330, 34.5-inch arms. Thank you. I saw that. I got you. By the way, my wife is a school teacher in middle school. She said, if I hear 6'7" one more time, I'm going to strangle one of these kids. And my son, who's in 8th grade, says guys walk down the hall doing the 6'7" thing.
Listen,
all day long.
my son, who's in 3rd grade, his teacher has informed all parents that she does not want to hear 6'7" in her classroom. I
bless that woman. It's to the point now where I was watching the Denver. Was it Denver play the Giants over the weekend? Is that who they played? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Denver Giants game. I think no, it wasn't. It was who did play last ago. Yeah. Anyway, whoever Denver was playing over the weekend.
Dallas.
That's right. They beaten the pants off the Cowboys. Nance and Romo made the call, and Romo said to Nance, "Go ahead, Jim, do the 6'7" motion." Like that's where we are in the 6'7" conversation.
We need to stop.
That's right. Okay. Zxavian Harris, number 51, 6'7", do the hand motion, 330 pounds verified, 34.5-inch arms. And I put him on this list because he is enormous, even when standing in the huddle with all the other enormous guys. Last year, we talked a lot about Deion Walker out of Kentucky, who was similar size and weight, ended up being a day 3 pick for Kentucky, for the Bills, in part because he had a back injury last year and he didn't perform as well as he had the year before. I thought he had some first-round reps, at least in 2023, a little more sporadic in 2024 for Kentucky, and he's playing pretty well in spot duty in Buffalo. I don't want to crush Zxavian Harris, but I needed to see a lot more. I understand, and I want to get your thoughts on this. When you're that size, how hard it is to play with low pad level consistently, and he just gets – if he doesn't win initially, whether it's against the run or the pass, he stands up. Sometimes he'll throw that spin move in there, and he'll get pushed off the ball. He'll occasionally stand up double teams. He has a little swim move that he'll win with occasionally and get into the backfield, but his lateral movement isn't there, so he's not going to be able to consistently make plays. He does hustle. I give him that. But I don't want to say I was disappointed, and I'm not disappointed in him. I wanted to see more given the God-given physical gifts that he had.
No, and I'm right there with you. I remember watching the couple of D linemen that they had last year, and I just remember him catching my eye, and I was like, who is this big-ass dude, number 51? Because he had some plays last year where he was attacking gaps, as a one-gap penetrator and being disruptive. But like you said, he has excellent size. He has very good length. But, man, does he play high. And I don't think it's when he gets beat. I think anytime he's getting off the ball, he's just extremely high. And
how do you change that?
At this point, I think – and I'm pretty certain that they are I'm pretty certain that they're teaching him to come off the ball, low pad level, low man wins. Right. I'm sure he's heard all these things, but I think he just reverts to what's comfortable for him.
Right.
And I said there are times where you see him where he moves like he's a former basketball player. So you can hit your Googles or your AI. It feels like he played basketball.
He played basketball in high school.
So I think because of that, I think he tries to finesse and out athlete every block instead of using that size, using that length to press blocks and recreate the line of scrimmage, and then use the athleticism to slip late, catch, take an edge. But I think right now he thinks he's a better athlete than he is, and I think he thinks he's a better athlete than any of the guys he's playing against. So a lot of the things you see him do is, him try to be cute off the ball. I think he also plays with a really, really narrow base. And I wrote the note down. There are times where he looks knock-kneed, when he's playing in there. And
what does that mean? His legs are too close together?
Yeah, where his knees kind of look like TP stands.
Like Fred Sanford, yeah.
And so what happens is when you play with a narrow base and you play on your toes, there's no power in there. Right? Because your feet are on top of each other. And I think you see that, and that's why he kind of gets knocked around some. I will say he does play with a good motor. You see him running out of the stack. You see him chasing the ball down the field. And then there was one thing, and I'm looking at my note. One of the things that I noticed is he gets a line late and a lot where he's kind of looking at the guy next to him. Now, I think they run a check with me system, right? So they get a line and they look to the sideline and get the call what they're going to do based off of how the offense lines up. But I think a lot of times too, he's looking at his D tackle like what are we doing? And then it's like, let me hurry up and get set. You know what I mean? So I think that affects him some too. Now against Georgia, play 62, the tight end, I think his name's Delk.
He sent him a message. Number 4.
Yeah, they tried to run a sift backside on play 62, and he absolutely destroyed him. Well, I'm saying Harris destroyed Delk.
That's right. That's right.
And I'm like, okay. Now, you know what's going to happen? There's going to be a defensive line coach that's like, man, if I get my hands on this dude, I'll be able to get him right. And
by
I
the
think
way, just quickly, in Oscar Delp's defense, he was outweighed by 100 pounds. He did get blown up. But if you're a defensive line coach, you have to look at everything else other than the fact that he's destroying undersized wide tight ends.
Hey, listen, the man tried to block him, and he got destroyed.
He did, 100%.
But I'll say this, like, playing how he's playing, again, he'll be a day 3 pick.
Yeah.
There will be someone that will try to maybe fight for him in the compensatory area of the 3rd.
Interesting.
Just because of the size, the athletic traits, the length. But I think you're not mad if you get this guy in the 4th round.
Oh, look, Deion went in the 4th round. Deion Walker, excuse me.
But Deion, in my opinion, Deion should have been a day 2 pick.
Yes. He had the back injury.
He had the back injury, and for somebody that size with the back injury, and him too, man. You know, I spent some time with him over the summer. Like if you meet him and you see him, he's just a big, smooth, you know, just kind of glide type of guy. You know what I mean? Like just the way in which he carries himself. I don't know Zxavian and how he carries himself, but there's that, what I say, that basketball mentality, that finesse, you know, mentality. Not saying basketball players are finesse, because you got the Kendrick Perkins of the world, the Zebos who were dogs, you know, who would, you know, bring it to you. But these guys, I think they view themselves as a little better athletes than what they are, instead of using your 6'7", 320-pound frame and probably 34, 35-inch arms to press blocks, create that separation, and then use the athleticism to slip and make plays.
Yeah, I think Deion Walker could have been a top 40 pick had he been healthy and played like he did in 2023, improved on that. Zxavian Harris, I think, has a ways to go. I think day 3 makes sense. And by the way, in my wheelhouse of NFL tough guys, it's Charles Oakley and Charles Barkley. And I'll throw Bill Laimbeer in there, old school. I'll take it back to the 80s. Remember Bill Laimbeer?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I didn't know if that was before your time. You made a face because he's a cheap shot artist, but that's all part of it.
I was going to say, Bill Laimbeer was dirty.
Yeah, that whole team was, though.
Yeah, but it's still one thing to be tough. But to me, like when you're dirty, to me that means you're fake tough.
I think Larry Bird. No, it was Robert Parrish punched him in the face.
Parrish, yeah.
He did back down when that happened.
Because that's typically what happened when you're a fake tough guy.
Yeah.
And somebody brings it to you, then it's like, oh, you know. Because
all right, I'll throw in Rick Mahorn then. Rick Mahorn was tough.
No, Rick Mahorn was tough. Charles Oakley was tough. What's my man? Xavier McDaniel.
X-Man.
Was tough.
That's old school.
Mark Aguilar was tough in his own way.
Yeah.
Like those were real tough dudes. Because listen, nobody would say Parrish was overly tough, but you didn't want to try him. You know who people didn't want to try was Akeem Olajuwon.
I wouldn't. Why would anyone mess with Akeem Olajuwon? He's 7 feet and whatever.
But you think about it, like he just kind of went about his business. He was smooth. He was probably one of the more athletic centers, big men that could play. And you know how serious his athleticism was when guards started going to him to learn footwork.
I didn't know that.
You're training with the center to learn better footwork. But I've heard some stories where he's had that open hand slap where he will slap the taste out of your mouth if you went too far with it.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about
Go
it.
get some water and rethink what your life plans were. All right, let's take another quick break here. We'll come back with the breaking-ish news, and we'll talk about some of our favorite rookies from Week 8, and then we'll get out of here right after this break.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
That is a rookie mistake.
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
All right, let's wrap this thing up here first with some breaking news. As you hear this, it will not be breaking news, but it is to us in real time. Aidan Hutchinson got that new contract. 4 years, $180 million extension, $141 guaranteed. That's the most for a non-quarterback in NFL history. $45 million per year, second most for non-QB behind. Good old Micah Parsons. So, this all surprise you?
No, this has all been a part of Brad Holmes, his philosophy. And again, we talk about it, or it's talked about publicly as this new phenomenon in terms of draft, develop, and re-sign your own. Like, it's talked about in some circles, like it's this, this is this great revelation that people want to draft players and develop them to become good players and re-sign them. Like, whoa, like that's new. But the Lions have done an excellent job in this area of not only hitting on their draft picks, but retaining their draft picks, and it not become a thing of a contract dispute. All of their key guys that they have drafted that have contributed to them have been handsomely compensated, have had deals done, and it hadn't become a thing. And I think this is just another example of it.
Yeah, if you're listening, Stryker just threw up a graphic, highest pressures per game this season. Aidan is number one at 6.9. Micah's at 6.0, and Will Anderson Jr. is at 6.0. And by the way, through 6 games last season before Aidan broke his leg, he was the best defensive player in the league, and he just got hurt in that Dallas game and wasn't able to come back in time. So he's picked up right where he's left off. And he's also only 25 years old. He's a year younger than Micah Parsons. So, yeah, to your point, it makes all the sense in the world. They redid Amon-Ra St. Brown's deal last year or so and made him one of the highest paid wide receivers at the time, former day 3 pick. And again, another great draft pick here.
So they've done him. They've done the right tackle. They've done Jameson Williams. They got his deal done. So, Brad, it's Brad Holmes, it's Ray Agnew, it's Dwayne Joseph, those guys in that front office. People don't talk about the job that this front office has done. And you can probably expect to start seeing Ray Agnew's name, Dwayne Joseph's name come up for some of these GM jobs. And if their name's not coming up, something's wrong, because the Detroit Lions have done it the right way, and you're getting the results on the field.
Yeah, and you actually gave a shout out to Kevin Shepard, the DC, who the big concern was how's that going to look in a post-AG world. Pretty good, and those guys have been banged up, but Aidan Hutchinson obviously helps.
And real quick, as you guys know, Aidan Hutchinson's a friend of the show, so I texted him asking how he's feeling, and he texted me this image back.
Yeah, he's doing the Ran dance. You got to name your dance, Ran. The Cabbage Ran. That's good. Same outfit on too. Someone get this guy.
Nope, it's not. Boom! I got my residency sweater on.
Oh, he had to do that. Got his $200 sweatshirt on. All right, let's shout out a couple of these rookies. Tyler Shough's on the list. We talked about him earlier. I went back and watched his second half throws. A lot of short and intermediate stuff. Did have an interception, but I think Chris Olave bobbled the ball and it was intercepted, so that's not on him. His numbers weren't that much different than Spencer's before Spencer got benched. Spencer was 15 of 21 for 136 with an interception, and Tyler was 17 of 30 for 128 with an interception. We talked about what Tyler needs to do going forward to not get Fernando Mendoza. Do you have any thoughts from just watching his second half performance? I mean, I thought it was a good start, but long way to go.
No, I agree with you. I think it's a long way to go. I think in order to see what you have, I think you got to open the offense up. a little bit more and give him more of an opportunity to throw the ball downfield. And I think we'll see that this week. Now, there's been a lot of questions concerning if they're going to trade one of these receivers, whether it's Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed. So we'll see how they're used, heading into this week. But you got to open the offense up a little bit more and give them a chance.
Yep, give him a chance. All right, next up, Mason Taylor, tight end of the Jets. And you might say, hey, he only had 5 catches for 34 yards, but he's going to be my with first pick young fella of the week because he caught a touchdown pass late in that game to help the Jets win their first game. We talked about it on Monday's podcast how they were able to finally win. Touchdown pass was the Breece Hall touchdown pass too, by the way. And I went back and watched it. So, Breece goes to his right, double clutches for some reason. I think he thought that maybe Mason was going to get a little bit more depth in that route. And then he just threw him a jump ball, and he made a great catch. So I just wanted to shout out Mason Taylor. Let me check real quick. I have this. He's actually been pretty good this year on a team that's not been very good in terms of tight end play among all rookies. He has 29 receptions, which is third among all rookies after Harold Fannin Jr. and then Tyler Warren. Fourth is my guy Ryan DeGatz in the second, who had another big night last Thursday. But anyway, I just wanted to give Mason Taylor a shout out. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on Mason in particular or the Jets in general.
No, man, he's a really talented dude, just super reliable, like he was at LSU. You knew in those high pressure situations at LSU, that's who Nussmeier was looking for to convert, those third downs. And I think he's creating and carving out the same role for himself with the Jets.
All right, let's talk about Cam Skattebo, he's on IR. I don't know if he's going to come back because he broke his fibula and tore some ligaments, I believe, in that injury over the weekend. And that's another huge blow for Jackson Dart and Brian Dable. No Malik Neighbors, who just finally had surgery in his ACL. Skattebo's had surgery. He's out. You have some thoughts on Cam?
Yeah, so I knew it's essentially as soon as they said they were taking him to the hospital and he had surgery that night, you knew it was going to be it involved some severe ligament damage and I thought potentially nerve damage. So that at least that hadn't come out. But based off of the injury and the nature of the injury, I want to just drop this to our listeners and viewers, readers, just in terms of the nature of the injury and what that recovery is going to look like. So initially it's going to be non-weight bearing, and I'm reading this off. It's going to be non-weight bearing for like 2 to 3 weeks because the deltoid of the ankle had to be repaired, and that was the ligament that was torn. And then it's going to be 2 to 6 weeks where you begin ankle range of motion and then a weight-bearing progression with the crutches and a boot. So he'll transition from probably being on a scooter where he can't put any weight on it for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then there'll be 2 to 6 weeks where he'll transition to wearing a boot, but then being on the crutches. And then there'll be a 6 to 12 week phase where he's off the crutches and out of the boot and then transition to a shoe within time. The goal would be being in a shoe by 8 weeks and then begin to, really start his re-strengthening that ankle. Because as you know, it's been in the boot. You're not having much weight on it. Like the atrophy sets in. So he's going to re-strengthen it. And then it's going to be, around the 3 to 6 month range. It's going to be functional strength. And then, begin some level of field work where it's like the sports specific stuff, the running, the cutting stuff will be worked in later. So ultimately it's going to be about a 6 to 8 month recovery.
So that's I didn't notice which IR they put him on, but it's effectively the end of
this season.
He's done. Gotcha.
Yeah. So ultimately it's going to be a 6 to 8 month recovery. But I will say, based off of the medical knowledge that I got when I asked about the level of this injury, they say these type of injuries typically do well in terms of being able to recover. I know there was some concern. I've heard some people say, man, he may never be the same coming out of this, but they said these type of injuries typically do well. But they said because of the type of surgery, the ankle typically will have persistent stiffness for months after. So he's going to experience some level of stiffness and tightness in the ankle, which if you factor in him being in New York where it's colder, it's going to really bother him at certain times. But for our fans, for Giants fans, for Cam Skattebo fans, he's looking at a 6 to 8 month recovery, but the nature of the injuries typically do well.
And you know what? Like taking the long view, because the knock on Cam, if there was one, we didn't know how fast he was. That wasn't his game anyway, so that wasn't really a concern for me. But just how much could his body take of the way in which he played? And maybe this will be good for him and just giving his body a break, because I don't know the last time his body had a break. He was a year ago dragging Arizona State up and down the field, getting them to the playoffs, and maybe he can just give himself a chance to recharge where he otherwise would not have. Because again, it felt like going the way he was going to be a 4-year guy, and then his body would just give up on him.
No, agreed. And especially after you see him after every tackle.
Yeah, right. Just shaking off the punishment he just passed out.
My 7-year-old was like, Dad, how come he shakes his head after every play? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that's just his little tick.
Yeah.
You know,
he's bulldozing people and shaking it off. All right, one last name I wanted to mention to keep the running back conversation going. RJ Harvey. And there were conversations that maybe he was drafted too high. He was a second-round pick. He 7 carries for 46 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Caught another touchdown on a little sneak flat route that he was wide-ass open on because Dallas Cowboys defense stinks. And basically, I just want to give him a little love because 40 of those yards came on his first carry, where it was – so ran a little wide zone to the left. There were 9 Dallas defenders at the line of scrimmage. You could have ran through that hole, given me the ball 20 yards down the field. I could have ran the rest of the way. He was literally untouched. And maybe that's some more commentary on Dallas, but I just wanted to give the man some love because he did score 2 touchdowns, caught another touchdown pass, and he can't control how bad the Dallas defense is. So RJ Harvey, second-round pick.
I'm glad you had us running a relay race to get the ball in the end zone because I was not running 40 yards to get it down.
Just got to go 20.
But nah, man, 3 tugs, for a young runner like you gotta show him some love. And then, like you said, man, some people thought he was drafted too high, but that's why you love Sean Payton and George Payton, because their draft board is specific to what they do and what they're looking for. Like, people question them taking Bo Nix, and it's worked for them so far.
Yes.
So George Payton is a guy I've always had a ton of respect for and how he went about his business. And he's just been successful at every place he's been because he gets it. He's process oriented. He's a strong evaluator, and they have good staff over there. So shout out to those guys. And shout out to Lige Douzable, him and RJ Harvey both went to the same school, Disney State University, the Fighting Mickey Mouses. So shout out to you, Lige.
Lige ain't gonna want to hear that. I made the mistake, and I used to get it confused. I've learned a lesson. I call it USF sometimes, and he does not want to be confused with USF. He went to UCF or Disney State, as you call it, which I'd never heard of, but I will be using going forward. All right, Ran, that's it. Young Fellow Wednesday in the books. You good?
I'm great, man.
All right, let's get out of here. Get back to the tape. We'll be back on Monday for Ran It Back Mondays. In the meantime, thanks to all you guys who watch and listen and comment. Please subscribe to the old podcast so I can keep the lights on here, and we will see you guys in the next one.